It's about sticking to your spiritual principles and values in the midst of just chaos and uncertainty. It's called Times Like These, written by Xavier Rudd. I believe in the stories of the stars, times like these. Constellations carry me, I'm almost past. I believe that the Milky Way still flows in times like these. I'm dreaming to carry forward, the spirit grows. I believe in the wisdom of a child in times like these. Says that I believe when the sun goes out, the child is born. I believe in the people standing tall in times like these. Their hands raised with intention to heal the world.
To you, and then gifted to me from Reverend Lafayette. And they were gifted to me from Sylvia, who I see in the back there. And I was going through them and I thought, let us just take a moment and allow these affirmations that Lafayette composed years ago, as I understand it, to just simply seep in your soul, in your bones. I am the cosmic Christ law of forgiveness. And and the violent consuming flame of all inharmonious thoughts and human actions. I am the conquering presence, and I command this mighty I am presence to govern perfectly my mind, my home, my affairs, and my world. I walk in the charmed circles of God's love, and I am divinely irresistible to my highest good now in this moment. I am the secret heart of God, and I now bring forth ideas and manifestations that have never before been known. I am the prosperity of God, and I now bring forth all the exchange, all the abundance that is required, that is desired, that is I am. Let's just be in that. Thank you, Lafayette. From my heart, I am. I wanted to bring us to that sense of consciousness and that sense of being. And I was grateful that I received the items from Sylvia before we launched into a message. And part of that is I want us to be extremely mindful. And I know that you are, but part of my reason for being here with you today, as divine order would have it, is to remind us of who we are and the truth of our being. And to do that gently, but also with a force like no other. The force of I am, God is. And you know what I am speaking of. In these times, right now, in particular for this community, change is difficult, to say the least. And all of you are experiencing change on your own personal levels. Some of you are sitting in your chair, still processing, and you will be next week, and the following week, and maybe next year. There's something new, something different. And change sometimes is not always comfortable. And we know that. We bless each soul in this room, and we bless each soul that is not in this room. And we carry all in our hearts and in our prayers. And I read to you this from Science of Mind while we're on a little bit about change. And then I'll tell you how I got to the talk title of Be Ready. But on the discomfort of change from Science of Mind, we cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. Some of you may say, oh, no. Oh, I say not. When I'm in a positive mood, I'm in a positive mood. There's those other emotions. I haven't dumbed them down or numbed them out. Well, yeah, probably you have. And then from Ernest Holmes himself, I am sustained by an infinite power, guided by an infinite intelligence, and guarded by an infinite love. Please try, and I'm happy to share these with you, to remember that as you go through your own changes and as this community continues to evolve, which is my word, my favorite word. But the evolution of anything does require some pain. Yeah, I know some of you are testing that like, not always, Rev Sandy, not always. I got one for you. Put it away for now, okay? I'm asking you to put it away for now only because that's not what we're here for today, is to discuss levels of evolution, levels of pain in that evolution, or levels of joy. I'm just simply recognizing that that might exist for especially now in these times. I thank you for inviting me. And so as I walk into the talk title, which is called Be Ready of All Things, I let you know that Reverend Paul called me, I don't know, some weeks ago and said, could you speak on this Sunday? And I said, yeah, sure, I haven't been with folks in a while. That'd be great, that'd be a lot of fun. And then Jan called and said, what's your talk title? And as usual, I don't have one usually until I walk through that door. But because of the nature, not knowing anything that's going on in the community, but the nature of Jan's issue, especially with her mother, I thought, Sandy, what's the talk title? Be ready. And that just came out of the blue. What does be ready mean? And I flashed on my father, of all people. Sundays were a big day in our house. And Sundays were a day when Mom pressed all of us to get our Sunday duds on. And if you come from my generation, you had play clothes, you had school clothes, and you had Sunday to go to meeting clothes. And the Sunday go to meeting was my little slap at the whole thing because I thought it was ridiculous. Mother at that point did not care what I thought. It was going to be done. Father, on the other hand, gave me a nod as it relates to ridiculousness in this manner, or at least I like to think he did. Sunday morning, we would be thrashing about arguing over which dress to put on and other things. And Dad would be usually way ahead of the game and sitting in the living room, all dressed, ready to go, with his jacket over the chair. And I would come down, usually the first to end the misery, and plop myself with all the drama of a 12-year-old girl in a chair across from him and say, why are you letting her do this? Something along those lines. And he would say, I'm not letting her do anything. And furthermore, it's not her, it's your mother. You remember all those sentences? And I would say, well, what are you doing? How do you get ready so fast? And he said, in the readiness is the beingness. And I said, well, how can that be? Because we're all thrashing around upstairs trying to find our shoes and what petticoat we're going to put on and blah, blah, blah. And you're down here nice and quiet. He said, Sandy, I think it's important that you understand being ready. You marshal your resources, meaning his coat, his tie, whatever he needed, the keys to the car, and then you just be. And it's in the being that you actually learn to enjoy the clothes you have on, the food you have, and the fact that you're going with like-minded folks to church. Boy, was that a novel idea to me, but I never forgot it. And somehow, when I thought of us today co-creating, Be Ready flashed in my mind because we are grateful. We are grateful. This community is probably a community of gratitude with a capital G, as I have experienced you. And you have always been grateful for what you have and what you give. And so what I'd like to talk about this morning as far as parts of being ready is when you, like this community does, spend your time, as you always do, in prayer, meditation, and discernment. You find a way to simply be with the situation. And it is in that beingness, the comfort of being with whatever it is, that is the essence of who you are as a community. I think it's the essence of who we are as human beings. It's the I am, it's the be. It's in the being comes the creativity, comes the ideas, comes the love, is the love. And then also in that beingness comes the recognition and the acknowledgement that there can be discomfort. And we always don't like to talk about or be in the discomfort. So where I'm going now is to just simply allow your imagination to go with me. Because there are some relationships that we have, and We all have relationships, whether it's with ourselves, whether it's the God of our being, and whether it's with each other. Relationships are with us. We all have them. And it is in the relationship that we can find transformation. And it is in the transformation we exercise the beingness of the I am. Now, very often when we're in a time of beingness, when we're in a time of change, and just so you know, I'm going to use Robert Brumet's Living originally and Eric Butterworth's Practical Metaphysics, just while we're speaking here. And what I'm going to talk about, the two aspects, are compassionate communication, because very often when we're in times of change, when we're in the difficulty, the discomfort of change, when we say, oh, I'm not liking this part too much, or we're fearful of the future, or we're not sure we did it right, or we look at someone else in our relationship with each other and say, could she? How could he? Why did he? And that brings me to compassionate communication. That is a title that some of you know from nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg, you may have had him here, either video, webinar. That's not who I'm referring to, and that's not who Robert Brumet was referring to. It is a Buddhist concept when we converse with one another compassionately. And it's a practice. And what does it include? It includes right speech. And here is the essence or the guidelines for right speech. And I'm bringing these to you in the context of you are going to get off these pews and chairs this morning. You are going to, some of you go back there for food, some of you are going to go out in the world and forget every blooming thing except the big elephant in the room. We got change, and it's right here in River City. And it's big and it's not comfortable. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't like it. Or the flip side is, I like it a lot. Either way, my friends, that is not compassionate communication. That is he, she, you, me. That is separation. There is no oneness in that conversation. There is no oneness of the I am. And here's what this writer, Reverend Robert Brumet, is saying is of compassionate communication, loosely interpreted from the Buddhists, and it includes, ask yourself these questions for right speech before you speak. Is what I'm going to say true? Is what I'm going to say kind? And is what I'm going to say necessary? Let's back through them. How many times have you said to yourself, right after it's gone out of your mouth, why did I say that? That was not needed. In fact, that bordered on harmful. I was telling Rob as I came in this morning, he gifted me with a beautiful photograph of the Jefferson Memorial as I was leaving the last time I was here with you. And I have it hanging at home. And during my last recovery, I had lots of people in and out of the house. And one woman just was enamored. She was a photographer. She was going to take it off the wall. And I said to her finally, Ruth, you're bordering on rudeness. You cannot have the photograph. Was that kind? Was it necessary? Was it true? Oh, my ego self says, you betcha it was true. She was rude as get out. She was going to take my picture. Ding, ding, ding. That is not right speech. And you know what? That was just me in a photograph. You have got a whole lot of opportunity here, people, to walk out this door today with all of the change and its discomfort and its pleasure to not speak rightly. We talk a lot in Unity about seeing rightly with the third eye. I like what Bormet is talking about with right speech, because I think we have become a culture, not just necessarily Unity, of people who have the fastest mouths in the West. Let me tell you how smart I am. Let me show you how spiritual I am. Let me be a gunslinger with the truth. And if you stop before you are the gunslinger, and you ask the questions, is what I'm about to say true? Is what I'm about to say kind? And is what I'm about to say necessary? Do you know how many times we're in interactions with other people when we are so hot spit to tell everybody how wonderful we are, or to show how much knowledge we have, or, here's a good one, to show what a kind person we are? What is that about? You show what a kind person you are. You either are a kind person or you're not. But some people go out of their way in the drama. Sound familiar? Remember when we had change? Lots of change, lots of drama, usually. It's up to those of us who are in this change mode to learn new tools, if you will. For some of you, you may say, well, okay, that's nice that the Buddhists do that. I'm offering it up to you as a tool today. Next time you open your mouth, close it. Seriously. And you're listening to an expert. Close it. And I do this for a living, right? Close it and just ask yourself, is it necessary, is it kind, and is it true? Okay? Just one. And I hope that you may walk out of here with some bit of that as you wrestle with the change that you now have going on here in this community. And remember, I said, there are folks in pain right now. They're not happy. There are folks that are happy. Don't let your being in the sloppiness of happiness sometimes to allow you to think you don't have to shut your mouth. Do it, please. The other part of this is listening. And I say this, these are two tools. If you walk away with nothing today, right speech and listening. And many of us in Unity, we like to think of ourselves as consummate listeners. Oh, I listen. You know what I do? I look that person right in the eye and they know I'm listening. Really. And then we hear the compliments. You know, I'm a multitasker. You know, I know how to compartmentalize. You know, I can work a room. Don't you love that? Especially here in Washington. What that means, folks, is, as Robert has laid out so nicely, there are 3 levels of listening, and compartmentalizing and multitasking are the lowest level of listening when you are having a conversation with someone. He says the lowest level of listening is when I hear the words of another person, but I'm totally preoccupied with my own thoughts and judgments. Been there? Mm-hmm. And again, you have a very ripe opportunity to go there and wallow again. Okay? Number 2, the next level of listening occurs when I am more open to what the speaker has to say, and I may even enjoy what she is saying. But everything I hear is received only at the level of my intellect. Okay, let's you and I try this one on for size. You're looking at me and I'm looking at you. And you're deciding right then and there whether, oh, she's got a snappy little comeback today, or there's a line I haven't heard, or she's looking much better today than she was the last time she was here. Intellect, ego, all of it. That's the second level of listening. Pardon me, and we pride ourselves on that second level. Because usually we try and couch it in positive terms. There's nothing heartfelt about that level. It's strictly ego. You're looking at me and I'm looking at you, and we're satisfying what it is we believe is I'll take that. Intellectually, that's good. Pardon me. Something's sticking in that one. The third level of listening is when you're honestly willing to be changed as a result of your interaction with the other person. I am willing to keep my heart open and to understand the speaker in a deep way. Are you? Are you? Or put it into this discomfort that presently exists. Are you willing? Thank you so much, Roy. Are you willing? Is it heartfelt? And I ask you this because each of you, and I'll see how long that lasts, each of you has an opinion about what is going on in this community. Each of you thinks certain things went one way, and that's to your satisfaction. Certain things went another way, that's not quite to your satisfaction. Could have been done a different way. I'm bringing this up because you have a tool here to ask yourself, how am I listening to what I'm saying? And how am I listening to what you're saying? What level of listening am I at? Have I gone to my heart, which is the chief level of listening? Or am I in my intellect and my ego? Or is it a hybrid of the two? See, I don't believe you can do a hybrid. You're in your heart or you're not. You're walking around the room intellectually, but you're not necessarily in your heart. Or you're in your heart, and the room is part of your surrounding. Please, when you get speaking to one another, when you send emails to one another, when you even bring this subject or any subject up, remember to utilize the tools of listening and right speech. And very often, if we listen, right speech will come. When we listen, we are not speaking. We are holding ourselves. So ask yourself, where are you holding yourself? At what level of listening? And I know I've said to myself, oh, I heard everything she said. There's nothing heartfelt in that. If you can go deeper with what someone said, you've been in your heart. You make a connection with that someone. Or sometimes, and I've done it myself, someone starts speaking, and instead of listening or holding my tongue, I've got them sized up in a nanosecond, and I don't want to have any part of this conversation at all. I'm mystery. I'm gone. My. There's not a whit of comfort for you or them in what could have been a comfortable situation, but now it's in discomfort or dis-ease or separation. You have walked away from an opportunity to connect with yourself first, with the other person, and then ultimately, if not first, with the God of your being. And that's the other part of what we talk about in unity, which is a whole other subject, free will. It's your choice. Walk away if you want to. Disconnect if you want to. Don't use right speech. But my purpose in being here today is to at least give you those two tools of what level of listening are you utilizing in that toolbox. And do you know what right speech is? And do you know when not to speak unless you are in right speech? Lastly, I wanted to touch on Eric Butterworth, and this is a twofold item. When we think, we talk about positive thinking, and this is something that Butterworth has written on for years metaphysically, but most people have not understood. And it goes into the mind. We have talked about the body, as in speaking and listening. But mind, we're always talking in unity about thinking positively and how that's good for us. And if we're thinking positively, then we're going to act and be positive. Here's what he says. You are not what you think. Ooh, oh, how long have you been told you are what you think? This is Eric Butterworth now, Mr. Icon of Unity. You are not what you think, you are thinking what you think. You are not what you think, you are thinking what you think. This is very important, he says. It's a distinction because the you that thinks what you think is more than the thoughts you are thinking. The thoughts are in your mind, and you have the power to control your mind. Now, I'm dumping this little tidbit on you at the end because I want you to say, oh, I didn't quite get that. She needs to repeat that. Repeat it yourself. Find the book and read it. That's what I mean. I'm dumping. And why am I dumping? Because positive thoughts is where a lot of us think we live. We're just rampant with positive thinking. We know all about positive thinking. Let me tell you about positive thinking. Right speech. Let me tell you about positive thinking. Is it true? Not what I was going to say. Is it kind? Not particularly. It's telling somebody they're wrong, that they haven't known anything for 30 years. This is how they thought, and now suddenly they don't know. Is it necessary? The ego in me says yes, because I'm up here and I get to dump this morning because you asked me to come. So I'm putting a little bit of humor in here, but it's very serious. When we speak, when we think, when we move and have our being, are we ready in having that being come and be from the Christ of our being? Or are we just slamming around the universe? It's a question. It's a very thought-provoking question. And it's one that I love to bring to this particular community. There are lots of communities, unity communities, that would say, throw her out. Don't ask her to come back. She's telling me that you are thinking what you think and that you're not what you think. I don't believe that for a minute. And some of you may come up to me after service and say, what were you thinking? Have at it. I'm grateful to be here. I very much thank you for this opportunity. We are now going to go into meditation, and I would like if you would please, after you've subsided with the giggle or the laughter or the dukes, just to be in spirit and know that, and know that.
My blues would never end. I wrote my back, sought the comfort of a friend. Stubborn and blueful, that I could do it on my own. That someone told me you never have to be alone.